psychology and computer science. And my project is ChatGPT Goes to College, Exploring Student Perspectives on AI in the Classroom. So, how many of us in here have heard of ChatGPT? All of us, right? That's what I expect. We're all in academia. We know the impacts of such technologies, such AI tools, and so this is what our study wants to look at in terms of how students are interacting with these tools. What is it? ChatGPT is an incredibly sophisticated AI conversational model. It is a model built off of a large database of previously generated human text, and it has the capabilities of producing very human-like text based on user prompt. It has the capability of evaluating and processing data, so you could feed it a table of results and say, interpret these. There are many possibilities with what it can do, and it also has the ability to synthesize knowledge so it can act as a sort of search engine, sort of as adjacent to Google or other functionalities like that. I'm sure that we've all seen it used for these purposes. I'm sure that we're all familiar with these purposes. We know how important these things are for academia. Widely accessible, extremely personalized, and accurate. Anyone with an internet connection has access to this tool. It's cloud-based. It's extremely personalized because those prompts can be fine-tuned by the user, and it is very accurate. Down here I'll be listing some sources throughout the presentation. But Cusinos did a really cool study where they actually gave ChatGPT I believe it was a pediatric surgery medical exam meant for medical students, and it passed with flying colors. It passed way above the average that students in that field were expected to perform at. So it's very accurate, it's very impressive what it can do. Like I said, very relevant for academia. Previous literature has looked at theorized potential benefits for both teachers and students alike. So there are potential improvements in pedagogy for teachers, such as the ability to generate lesson plans, or the ability to generate exam questions, or just rough drafts or stuff like that. For students, it could function as a personalized tutor, or as a way of generating notes, stuff like that. However, as I'm sure you are all aware, there is potential for academic misuse. Students may cheat with ChatGPT. Students might use it for academic misconduct. And like it says, with ChatGPT, students have access to a tool more powerful, ubiquitous, and cost-effective than anything previously encountered in academia when we consider its personalization, its accuracy, its ability to generate text that is difficult to differentiate with human text. Have any of you heard of the research paper that got published a few years ago that was totally done by ChatGPT? Any of you? There was a paper that it completely passed the entire review process, and after it had gotten accepted for journal publication, the authors let the journal know that, hey, this entire thing was written by ChatGPT, and it was a test of could it pass review standards. So sometimes the text is difficult to determine from human text. And so it's important to consider the purpose of the study, what we know about academic misconduct, because we're curious about how students are cheating with this tool. It's very pervasive, hard to measure. Depending on the study, in the literature, they've kind of used different definitions of cheating, but what we find is that one of the biggest studies was done by Donald McCabe, and he found that over 3/4 of participants from a big cross-campus sample report engaging in academic misconduct, so over 75% of students. That was replicated by Harris in 2020 using the same measure, so a more modern example. And one of the also important things that we know is that it's predicted by contextual factors. So peer support for cheating or a normative peer environment is one of the most important predictors. So if students believe their peers to be cheating, or they believe that their peers think a behavior is not cheating and are doing it, then they are more likely to engage in that behavior. And that's really important for our research, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And with this in mind, we want to understand what uses of ChatGPT count as academic misconduct. Surprise, it's a little bit controversial. I'm sure that many of you who are students have interacted with instructors that say, no ChatGPT, don't use it at all, it's completely cheating. Many of you have also interacted with instructors that have said, use it, it's good, use it as a tool. I've had instructors that do both. So obviously it's a little bit controversial, and I mean there's sources that are so far on either side you wouldn't believe it. But as I mentioned previously, peer support is actually one of the biggest predictors of cheating behaviors. So the important question becomes, what uses of ChatGPT do students think are cheating? Because we want to understand what is the normative environment that is currently being curated around these AI tools. And so we want to understand how and why students are using ChatGPT. Currently our knowledge is limited, but there are two important studies in this area that form the theoretical framework for this study. One is by Ferui from 2023, where they modified two different tools, which are sort of technology acceptance scales. One of them is the TAM, which is the technology acceptance model, and the other one is the UTA-UT2, the Unified Theory of Acceptance and Use of Technology. And these are both motivational scales that have items for why students might be motivated to use different technology. And they found that the variables of performance expectancy, effort expectancy, hedonic motivation, and learning value predict intent to use ChatGPT. And for the student behavioral uses of ChatGPT, the et al. In 2023 applied the use of gratification theory, which basically says that people that interact with new technology or consumers that interact with their environment are active rather than passive, and so the way in which someone interacts with the new technology impacts how they use it. And they specifically modified that scale to address specific uses of ChatGPT and found that students mainly use ChatGPT for academic content creation, information seeking, novelty uses, and convenience uses. So, with all that background, and I know that was a lot, and I'm talking really fast, so I'm sorry about that. There's a lot of information I want to get through. With that background, the purpose of our study is to present comprehensive data on college students' ChatGPT usage patterns, attitudes, and cheating behavior perceptions so that we can better understand the environment around cheating with ChatGPT in academia currently. There's a twofold path towards this goal. First, we want to explore how and why students are using ChatGPT, see how it compares to the two previous papers that I mentioned, and we also want to examine student perceptions about ChatGPT use and academic integrity to discover that environment, which I previously mentioned. In doing so, we can equip instructors with data about normative student impressions of AI tools and provide knowledge of how they can be implemented in the classroom. Method. We made a big Qualtrics survey. We gave it to students enrolled in Intro Psych at the University of Oklahoma. This was for credit, so they're required to do a certain amount of studies before they finish Intro Psych. You're nodding. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with it. So we gave it over SOA. It was a big survey. We had demographic questions, and then we had a few different use matrices. And so what we did is we created, I think it was a 28-item scale based off the items of the previous two studies that I mentioned, and we asked them how frequently they used AI for each of those behaviors, whether they think each of the behaviors was cheating, why they used AI for each of the behaviors, and then how accurate they think each of the behaviors are. We also asked them about their general cheating behaviors in college, and we asked them additional items such as, has AI increased the learning value of your education, and who do you think should create policies when it comes to AIs in college? We did a couple of psychometric analyses on the data, so this is where it gets a little intense. But we basically, to assess the dimensionality and to see how our data clump together, we conducted an exploratory factor analysis on 3 different matrices: the frequency of use, the perceptions of cheating, and the motivations for use scale. It's a little technical. We performed it using R, using version 4.2.1, and we used an oblique rotation alongside an ordinary least squares estimation. And then we conducted a t-test between each of the factors and the inter-item factors. So between the factors and frequency of use, we conducted t-tests together, so on and so forth, between the other two scales. And we also, at the end, examined all correlations between all variables of interest. Our correlational table was huge. It took up an entire page in the paper. But basically, I was making this presentation, and I was like, what would be the best thing to present to a group of people who have been looking at research all day? And I thought an in-depth look into 3 different EFA tables. So I've got some data. I'm completely kidding. I'm not going to walk step by step through everything we found, but there is a QR code at the end with a full link to the paper if you're curious. It also includes my references. What I will do is I'm going to step through each of the EFAs and just look at the factors and explain kind of what we found. So for our frequency of use table, we found a 3-factor model: information gathering, response generation, and learning and self-improvement. So these are sort of the different behaviors with ChatGPT that include the different purposes of how a student might use it. So information gathering includes the items that are, you might consider academically ethical. So it's like gathering information, summarizing my own notes, using it as a search engine, stuff like that. Response generation, on the other hand, are items that are academically unethical. So this included items such as answering exam questions, answering assignment prompts, answering discussion board prompts, stuff like that. And learning and self-improvement are mostly our non-ethical uses. that are like this one. You can see information for personal growth that aren't explicitly academic. The t-test revealed students primarily are using ChatGPT for information gathering, which is good. We like to see that because it wasn't response generation, which would have been bad. For our perceptions of cheating scale, again, a 3-factor model was found. It's interesting because there are some parallels you can draw between the different factors in our different models, but basically, these are the behaviors that we looked at in terms of looking at oh my goodness, I just saw 1 minute. Okay, I'm gonna speed through this. We found 3 factors. Basically, yeah, just in terms of time, I'm just gonna say that it splits into the differences in how students think certain behaviors are cheating. The one to pay attention to is this PAM. These are the items that students think are cheating with ChatGPT, and that's what the t-test confirms. Finally, motivation for use scale. Students use it for either value and convenience reasons or hedonistic reasons. And so some of our notable correlations. General cheating behavior positively correlated with response generation, but didn't correlate with each of the other use. This is really important because what it shows is that students that are using ChatGPT poorly for cheating are going to show higher levels of general cheating behavior. But our other forms of AI use don't correlate with general cheating at all, which is really important because it provides evidence that students can use it in a responsible manner. Similarly, using it for our good use, IG, shows that it predicts student belief that ChatGPT has increased the learning value of their education. Again, a very impactful conclusion. There's also a very big negative correlation between response generation and PAM, which basically shows that as you use ChatGPT more for bad purposes, you are less likely to believe that those purposes are cheating. Again, I know I'm running low on time, but basically, we view these results very optimistically in terms of implementing ChatGPT in the classroom, in terms of understanding how students are using ChatGPT, because as I've shown, we see evidence that there already is a normative understanding of what uses of ChatGPT are cheating and why using ChatGPT for those purposes might not be the best. So we do view these results very optimistically. Just some limitations. Our sample wasn't super diverse, sort of the problem of American college research, right? It's all intro students that we're using. And probably our scales could have been a little bit more comprehensive because we only had 2 papers that we based them on. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Do we have any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
So based on your results from this study, how do you see it positively or maybe negatively impacting future research on AI use in academia?
That is a really good question. Did you ask how I see it impacting future research?
Yeah.
I think that, understanding the basis that there's already this environment of students understanding what uses of AI tools are cheating, I think that can be really helpful because from there you can build research that looks into specifically how do we implement it in the classroom, specifically what policies can universities adopt, because you can formulate those with the knowledge that students already kind of know what's cheating, what's not cheating, stuff like that. I would say that's one direction that future research could definitely look into. Yeah?
Could you elaborate on what you found students to answer that policy? You asked about policy or like who they think should be like in charge of how ChatGPT is used?
Yes, yeah. And so I'm actually really glad that you asked about this because this was, I would say, the one result that really surprised me. We did ask students, so, oh yeah, all of these were Likert scored. But we asked them on a Likert scale, like, how much do you agree with the statement that, like, universities should create policies with AI tools rather than, like, the individual instructors? And so it was basically just testing, do they think universities or instructors should be creating policies? And what we found is that students who are more likely to use ChatGPT for response generation or actively, like, are unethical uses, they're actually more likely to think that universities should create policies as opposed to the instructor. So I don't really know the implications of that. It was kind of a stumper for me. I wasn't really sure why we found that result, but it was the one really surprising result that we found. So thank you for asking. Yeah.
So do you feel like the research supports the idea that ChatGPT should be integrated into the classroom, or should it continue on with strict limitations as it is now?
Yeah, I do think it supports the interpretation that universities should try to implement ChatGPT, or at least proceed with the knowledge that ChatGPT is going to be used. And the reason that I say so is because of, sorry, I'm going back, is because of this result right here. The fact that students who use it in a good manner report that it has increased the learning value of their education. I think that provides evidence that students